the hot seat here.
You're right next to me. Your last session of the day. So what a big day. Is everybody excited or tired or how are you feeling? All of the above? All right, nice. Well, so we're here to discuss the, I think it's called the Customer Insights or Customer Advocate Showdown. And so we've got a cross-functional panel. We've got product, design, marketing, and you're representing CS and maybe CX.
Sure.
I'm sure. And I'm just a moderator, so I have no skin in this game. But the idea is that we're going to talk about which function best should represent the customer inside an organization, if any of these functions. And the idea is to make it a bit of a debate. So, what these panelists say may not actually be what they believe, but I've asked them to kind of ham up their opinions for the fun so that we end up having a nice panel at the end of the day. So, SK, let's start with you. SK runs our product team, and you saw him this morning in the keynote. He's a product manager through and through after some years at VMware, then product board, and now Dovetail. SK, tell us why you think product management should be the owner of the customer and customer insights.
First thing, that's a very leading question. But anyway, especially in front of researchers, you got to be careful. But I do think product managers should own customers because I think we're in a unique position where we can actually hear insights from different functions. We're getting feedback from support and CS and CX. We're getting feedback from sales. We're getting feedback from engineering. We're in the middle of everything. So we feel like we have probably the most well-rounded understanding of what customer issues are bubbling up at a company. And we also have enough business context to know which of those problems actually matter. So from that context, I feel like PMs are probably best positioned to own customer insights.
And you've got the roadmap, and all the engineers do what you say, and okay.
I got the keys to the kingdom, baby.
You've got the keys to the kingdom.
Yeah.
The rules to roost. So Ryan, you're at Databricks, and you run product design there. Let's hear the pitch for design.
All right, I'm not actually going to bite on that, Benjamin. I know you want me to fight for design. I'm going to disappoint all the designers here. I'm not going to argue that design should own customer insights, and I'll give you kind of a quick story on why. So. If you've ever run a design team or you worked in a design team, people will oftentimes be debating about whether they should call you the design team or the user experience team. And I've always hated the term user experience to describe what I do. You might ask, why, Ryan? Why do you hate that term? And I'll tell you. It's because user experience is obviously everyone's responsibility, kind of like brand, right? The person who answers the phone, for your customer support department, that person's on the brand team, right? The engineers are on the user experience team, the PMs are on the designers, everybody is part of the user experience team. So I kind of look at customer insights kind of the same way where I'm I wouldn't want to own it. I feel like
it's
why gatekeep it for my department? I kind of want to do a team sport with everybody on it. So that's my take.
Okay, so you're on team.
I'm on decentralize it, yeah.
Decentralize it, okay. And Carolou, so Carolou, when I was at Atlassian, Carolou's the CMO, and your background is in marketing. So tell us about marketing, obviously big budgets, so maybe a good team to own customer advocacy and customer insights. What do you reckon?
Right. Well, one of the things that's most important for marketing to do is market strategy. A really great marketer will be thinking about where the company should be going, both who we should be selling to, what product directions we should be headed towards, what competitors are doing in the market. So we do need customer insights to tell us what existing customers are doing, but marketing also needs to own prospect and market insights. So I think really owning customer insights as part of the voice of the customer, voice of the market to create strategy is critical for marketing teams. I would also say from a practical perspective, I have argued before for marketing to own customer relationships, which is very an odd thing, but depending on the size of the company, sometimes when you're a small company starting out, everyone in the company wants to talk to your best customers. You've got one really influential, big deployment that's so successful, and product wants to talk to them, the research wants to talk to them, and marketing wants to talk to them, and every salesperson wants them to do a reference. And they get fatigued, and they get angry, and they get frustrated. And so marketing has really been in the seat before where we own the customer experience to say, how can we moderate who's talking to customers at what time to keep our most valuable customers for the most valuable opportunities. And so one of the things we've been able to do is do it on a janky spreadsheet and tell people they couldn't talk to them, but then share the results amongst ourselves at the right periods of time. So market strategy, don't fuck up your best reference customers. And then I think the third one is really brand. Marketing is responsible for the brand, and that's every touch point across the whole company that we don't own, but we do own. So I think knowing the customer experience end to end, it's almost an impossible task, but that's what we ask our product marketers to do to really make our company successful.
Yeah, you guys are doing journey mapping and lifecycle marketing and stuff, and so maybe, you know, marketing is a good spot to have the CX, but Sarah, so Sarah used to work at Dovetail. She ran our CS team, background in customer success, and now you're at OpenAI, and so you're representing customer success or CX or both.
Yeah.
So tell us why you think that that function should own customer advocacy and customer insights.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. It's so obvious that I was like, how do I even make this argument? Just kidding. Okay, so product has the roadmap, and it sounds like design has sort of the ability to democratize. Marketing's got their marketing strategy, but we have the people and the receipts about what's actually happening.
You got the revenue.
And we got the revenue,
yeah.
depending, I did at Dovetail, depending on the company. So I think, and that point's really well made, because I think a lot of who should own the customer is who has the most skin in the game for these customers actually being successful, who's accountable and has to get on the phone every day when stuff breaks, when product says, we'll get it to you, when marketing oversold a feature, when design hasn't quite gotten there or talked to a customer yet. It's the CSMs, the support reps, and sometimes the salespeople who are like really taking that in and can bring that to life for the rest of the company. So when I think about who's actually accountable, whose numbers are tied to the customer actually getting value, more often than not, it's going to be your customer success team. So.
Ooh, you make some good points. You make some compelling points there. And a couple of pot shots at product and design and marketing, so I love it. Well, I want to talk a little bit about maybe some of the some of the ways that you've seen functional silos kind of develop, because I think one thing that's really clear is that each function obviously has some role to play in, you know, doing research and talking to customers and managing feedback and customer insights. And so, Carolou, maybe I'll start with you. Like in larger organizations, these silos can develop. What are some of the ways where you see that tension between like marketing and other teams like product and CS and CX and design as it relates to customer insights? And you mentioned contacting the same people a lot.
Yeah, I mean, if we go back in time before Dovetail, we tried to get 5 or 7 people on one call with a customer and all ask our little pieces, and then someone would miss the call, and there'd be some scribbled notes, and then it wasn't recorded a long time ago. And so I think really the silo of everyone having different needs and duplicating efforts with customers has been a really big issue, and that's an issue for the customer experience, and it's also an issue for our company because we haven't always been good at sharing. You know, I run a ton of customer events, and customers at the events are providing a lot of feedback, but we didn't always have a very good way to capture it and like put it back towards product. Or, you know, if we have a customer advisory board without a really good system of record, we might not be able to prioritize what we're really hearing and that are the greatest priorities in support to integrate those ahead of a customer advisory board. So, I mean, I think really having the technology that brings all the customer insights together in one place so each team can draw what they need and not duplicate, especially over a longer period of time. And especially when, you know, if you could be doing a customer interview and reread all the things your company already knows about them, you don't have to waste their time either.
That's true. And so there's 2 other sort of functions that aren't really represented here, and I want to kind of call those 2 out. So obviously user research is one of them, and research ops. And then separately, I think that maybe data and data teams if you think about what a data team and a CIO owns today, it's quantitative, data warehouses as well as business data and so on. Qualitative data is still data, and so it kind of makes sense to me that data and insights teams potentially end up being the guardian of this going forward, especially if it's a company-wide kind of setup. So Ryan, we were talking about this before. Obviously you're at Databricks, and I want to understand, talk to me about kind of insights infrastructure and how you might have this kind of centralized, you're advocating for sort of being decentralized, I guess, every team kind of responsible.
I loved your line from this morning from the keynote. I think you said something about, Dovetail could potentially be like the qualitative data warehouse, and so that really resonated with me, like working at a data and infrastructure company. Look, like here's how I think about it. Like whenever throughout my entire career, whenever there's some good customer insights, every time I talk about the insights, if someone wants to sort of like follow up on them and learn more, you're referring people to these like static like things like documents, decks, spreadsheets, whatever it might be, right? And they're like on someone's desktop, or they were like at an event that you were at, the other day, or whatever it might be. And but they're all kind of living in these sort of dead-end places, dead-end holes. And the thing that's so interesting to me about something like Dovetail and about where we are right now is that these customer insights are not living in these dead places. It's like this living system now that you can kind of go and drink from the well like day after day after day kind of thing. And so I really think like the concept of a qualitative data warehouse is like really fitting, because when you think about like insights, they have like a shelf life. Like like we might be working on a project together and some particular insight is like really amazing to us and it unleashes us. But then in like 2 months, like everybody knows the insight or the strategy's changed and we don't really care about it anymore. So when you think about the insights separate from the data, and you think about data storage and you think about insights, like it's like the data can last forever and you can keep going back to it, asking new queries of it. But when you sort of conflate the storage of the data and the questions all in these like static documents, like the old school way, that can't happen.
Yeah, one of the analogies that I use in my head is this difference between, I guess, like compile time insights and runtime insights. Anyone who's done some computer science or programming, if you look at like an analytics warehouse, it's not like you're generating the insights kind of when the data's collected. It's all sitting there and then you're querying it when you need the insights, right? Like you're going and doing the querying to get it. Whereas I think with research, what happens often is we generate a report at the end of the project, but that might not be when the people actually need to read the report. So how do you go from that being generated at the time the work is done to actually at the time when the insights are needed? And if you have this sort of data lake or data warehouse and you can use AI to query and you can ask questions and things like this, maybe it helps teams get to the insights when they need them, where they are, like not at the time that you're the person collecting them, right? That's sort of your point on it being this living infrastructure.
Yeah, there's like this whole new level of reusability of the insights, which didn't exist before, which I think is super powerful.
And I just love the time compression, right? I mean, we used to have people on board and they'd have to sit through 20 or 30 customer support calls, and then we'd ask them to read the last 10 customer case studies, and then most people would like not do it because they had too much to do. And so the fact that we can so rapidly consume a whole bunch and kind of get the assessment of more than you could read in a period of time, and then spot check, right? I mean, I love that it surfaces, you can look at specific individual examples even as you're getting the summary of all the pieces. I mean, that's just transformative to having every person in a company be customer informed and customer obsessed.
Yeah, SK, you're
one thing that just from my own personal experience, when I joined Dovetail, obviously the onboarding was like pretty intense. Like they give you a lot of documentation to read, lots of stuff, and you're like, dude, I don't even really understand the product yet, and I'm like consuming all this information without really any of the context. And I joined this week last year at I/O. That was my first week. So I go back to work on Monday, and Benjamin is like, dude, we're planning for the fall launch, and we're going to be working on surveys. And I'm like, wow, I don't know anything about this survey thing. So as a good Dovetail employee, I went into Dovetail and said, hey, what are our customers saying about surveys? And I could find information from 2 years ago that some designer who doesn't even work at Dovetail anymore interviewed some customer who's probably not even a customer anymore, but maybe they are. But anyway, I could just within 5 minutes get a sense of why we're actually working on this problem. So I feel like it was when I wanted the information, not when somebody wanted to give me the information. And I think the interesting thing too is oftentimes companies don't realize how much information and how much knowledge they already have about their customers. It's just that it's siloed, it's stuck somewhere else that I can't get to. And therefore, anytime somebody asks me for something, I feel like, oh, that's a new project. I need to go talk to 10 customers to figure it out. And it's such a bloody waste of time. And so having some kind of a warehouse where I can go in and do a quick search, get to 50, 60% knowledge, it's a good way for me to ramp up and get started and save some time as well.
It sounds like you're coming around to Ryan's argument that product shouldn't actually own all of this, and it should be some sort of,
Yeah, I never quite believed that anyway, but yeah.
Data and insights team, perhaps.
Yeah.
So, Sarah, I want to ask about, in your experience, how the reality is, I guess, most businesses still operating in silos, right? So, functional silos, I'm sure most people are familiar with this. And for something like customer insights, where you might have the sales team using Gong, you might have a marketing team with voice of customer or feedback from community events, you might have design team doing usability testing, research team doing interviews and usability testing, running surveys, and then product team now doing discovery calls and everything. How do you, without this holy grail of kind of a data warehouse where every function's dumping all their stuff into it, how do you drive collaboration between these functions? Have you seen anything work particularly well?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a feedback tax. It just every time it takes a little bit of extra time to go answer the question. I think one of the things that I learned working at Asana that I really saw be true at Dovetail is there are just key moments in the year where insights are more important than other times. So this is usually during some sort of roadmap or planning session, or this is around a huge launch and it's the couple weeks after. I think especially on a customer success team, you have the opportunity to sit down and look at the calendar and say to yourself, when is this going to be most relevant for my stakeholders? Because the drip feedback river, I'm sure all of you have a Slack channel somewhere that's support tickets or Gong calls and it's piping through. That's good for building intuition and starting to get a pulse check, but it's not very good for helping a company make decisions at important times. So I think one of the things I've learned is just be sensitive to the time and bring people together around times that are most important for your company, and that conversations that happen for important inflection points and important decisions can be one of the most helpful ways to get people together. So rather than here's a monthly report of everything happening in the customer base, it's here are the decisions as a strategic organization we're going to make. Let's come around together these decisions. I'll get you the information you need. You tell me the kind of decision you're trying to make. So I think just being empathetic around what the timelines are for your other stakeholders is something that's really helpful for CS teams.
It ties in really nicely to what I was talking to Tamara about this morning, which was as somebody doing research, it's about asking the executives and figuring out what is a strategic priority for the business, and then actually lining up your work with those priorities and those questions that need to be answered. Carolu, back to you about strategic, driving strategy through insights. And if that, obviously in marketing, you're dealing a bit more with market research and kind of maybe looking at competitor analysis and things like this. Have you had success in a particular business, at Atlassian, for example, in driving strategy or influencing executive strategy through insights from a marketing perspective?
I was going to build on the timeline. So my role, again, I was a CMO myself. Now I advise CEOs and CMOs of growth companies, generally between 50 million and $1 billion in revenue. So the most important inflection points for the C-suite are the board meetings, because that's when you tell your strategy to your investors and ask them for more money to go do it. So I would tell you to track when the board decks or board meetings are on kind of team calendars. I always put them on the marketing team calendar, and we backed out a month from that to send up a couple slides. And the very best CMOs start their presentation presentation to the board with what's going on with the market and what's going on with the customers. Because the investors don't care about actual marketing. They care about revenue. How fast can we get our money back that we've invested in you, and how can we dominate competitors? That's really what they care about. So the board meetings are a crucial inflection point. I definitely think the annual planning cycle, when you're maybe 2 or 3 or even 4 months out from the annual planning cycle, most companies are on a calendar fiscal year, so the CFO will start trying to come up with the budget in August, September, October. Executives will propose what we want to the investments in the engineering team to be for the next year, kind of November. So real big customer insights that are driving strategy, generally if you're on a fiscal year, would come out in the fall. And then I would say there's some other inflection points where there's moments of existential crisis. And I think we're in a moment of existential crisis right this second. Big companies are getting disrupted by AI. There's dozens, if not tens, if not hundreds or thousands of small AI companies that are all competing against each other. And the underlying AI is changing at such a rapid rate. What OpenAI released 3 weeks ago, and then Anthropic 1 week later, and then open source Llama the next week, and then DeepSeek the next week. So investors and CEOs and boards are terrified right now of the disruptive nature. So I think it's a critical time to be driving strategy. And again, strategy is this funny word where people get into business and want to do strategy, and you have to have your fingers in the dirt and understand how the plants are growing to plan the garden. And so I really think customer insights and research teams are some of the most strategic people in the business. The problem that you have is synthesizing that into really actionable things that executives can be like, how many headcount do we need? When will you fix that? And how much revenue can you commit to if you fix that? So the presentation before this, where he said, what doesn't align to the business strategy won't get read by the research team. I'm paraphrasing incorrectly, but I think that's right. It's don't tell me the weather, advise me, what to wear and how long it'll be until I can have my birthday party outside.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I do feel like a lot of the themes when I talk to our customers that I see is that research in particular can be quite passive. And I feel like a lot of businesses actually want research to be more active and say, well, that's great that you're telling me that this is broken, but what do you think we should do about it? And I do feel that sometimes research teams in particular are a little maybe reserved and wanting to step from passive insights into kind of hey, this is what I think. And in fact, there's a lot of research, very smart people, right? So I feel like you guys should back yourself and go a little bit further.
There's no right answer, and it's hard to commit. When I was more junior, I thought the executives had the more information and were making good decisions, and then I became an executive and realized we're making it up as we go along.
Yep.
Whoa. I don't know about that.
The best decision we can make with the information we have available at the time.
Yeah.
There's no clear answers
I feel
or
like
right
that's how
answer.
we work, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're making it up as we go along. Like this panel. Ryan, I want to, you're really keen on this idea of insights infrastructure, which is awesome. And I think that if this is something that businesses believe in, and if people in this room believe in, what they often run up against, though, is the economic buyer for that. Because a research team, research ops team, product ops, design ops, even marketing team won't really have the budget to go and do this sort of org-wide insights platform, this kind of org-wide intelligence platform. So thinking about your role at Databricks, how would you even get the budget for something like that, and who do you think is the economic buyer for that kind of platform?
I think it's hard. I think design orgs and research orgs typically are sort of not the best. They don't have the best source of funds. Within an organization, they don't have the biggest sort of buying power. Every CIOs everywhere in the last couple of years have been trying to really cut back on software costs, and so you have to be thrifty and you have to be efficient. So, I mean, when I think about going back to the metaphor of qualitative data warehouse, to me it seems like you're being incredibly resourceful within your organization if you're stewarding like some efforts to collect all of these insights that, as I was saying, typically would just go off into these dead-end holes as like decks and things that people don't read after like the meeting's over. If you're putting all those into some sort of a database of some kind, and you're able to continually reuse the insights, or with new queries, you're getting like new results constantly over a period of time. Like there's so much economic value in that. And if anyone on my team was wanting to champion like some sort of an effort like that, I would be like, yeah, dude, like go. Like that's a very, very valuable thing you're going to do. I've seen many efforts over the years of like user research teams trying to build things like that, kind of like homegrown efforts. And the intention is always very good, but I've never really seen like a great execution. Because I think like, in fact, at Databricks, like we have a thing called Voices, which is sort of like a Dovetail-esque type of thing where we can ingest all of these different data sources, and then we can go talk to this RAG model and get insights about our customers. And like the insights are great, and like the data quality is really awesome, but it's like one data scientist who's basically trying to build like Dovetail, and it's not very good. And the user experience is horrible, and it's very, very limited. And so, I think everyone's trying to do something like this. I don't know if everyone realizes like how hard it is to like do it well. But to your question around value, like there's a ton of economic value in the reusability of these insights. And that's what I think is key.
Yeah, we've had a few instances where I've had customers come to me and say, hey, like the big unlock for us was I demoed Dovetail in like a board meeting or like at the executive meeting or something like that, and it was like the highlight reel in particular that was the thing that got people over the hill. And I think that just having executives and strategic decision makers like see customers and like just actually like listen to customers is really, really powerful. So you can't underestimate that. And often that's been the thing that's in our case driven adoption of Dovetail at a broader scale, is when someone has managed to actually demo it at a bigger level. So we're almost out of time. I want to.
So whoever has the budget should own it.
Yeah.
And I think to that point, I think what you're saying, Benjamin, too, is like, it's almost like the company needs to own the customer, right? Like the functions is probably the wrong way to think about it. It's almost like your C-suite needs to own the customer, and therefore they should fund it.
Yeah.
Is maybe the way to think about it. And if it's not important to them, you're not going to get money.
Maybe the CEO.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, I guess I was talking about Jeff Bezos this morning and Amazon and the culture. I do think it is a very top-down thing. Tamar was mentioning that too. It has to come from the top. And I think that is, if you're not in an organization that values the customer, it is quite hard to change that culture. I want to end with like a couple of, like one practical piece of advice from each of you. Again, I mentioned, same thing this morning. A lot of folks here in my conversations today and yesterday are in businesses where they're maybe not on the bleeding edge, they're maybe not so customer-centric, and people here are really passionate about that and trying to drive change. So what's like one thing that you've seen work in your experience that people can do to try to drive that culture shift and actually maybe set up tooling or change the culture or a ritual or a process to infuse the voice of the customer into the day-to-day? I might start with you, Sarah.
Yeah, I can start. I have a few. I'm kind of filing through my head here, but the one that stands out to me is probably because you're talking about the importance of leadership at the top, especially at a place like OpenAI where things are changing so much. Our executives, sending them like the 5 use cases that they've heard about in the field with a little bit of extra detail gives them the confidence to be able to represent the customer. Often they have the desire to do so, but they haven't talked to a customer. They're too busy. And so finding those nuggets, whether it's a highlight reel or a memo, so that your executives and your leaders always feel like they know what's top of mind with customers, that gives them the power to walk into meetings with their stakeholders and say, actually, like we're hearing this like real real-time use case with customer support is really taking off at Klarna, that gives them the confidence to be able to talk about the use case and kind of gives them the ammunition to go represent the customer elsewhere. So I think if you always know what those use cases are, every customer success manager knows what those use cases are. If you can push them to distill them, send the report, and make sure your boss, whoever that person is, knows what those 5 things are, you'll be surprised how often that story will come back to you in a meeting, and you're like, yeah, I know, I heard that. I heard that.
That's Carolou.
I couldn't agree with that more. And again, thinking from an executive perspective, board slides, 1 or 2 highlights of use cases or customers or highlights. And then the other thing, I worked for a company called Classy, which was a social impact company that made software to help nonprofits fundraise. And it's the only company, ironically, that I've ever worked for where every single month on the all hands, they invited a customer and/or shared a customer video. And it was just religious. And I felt so connected, and I felt like my team was connected. And then once we heard that customer video, people would have all sorts of questions and follow up and go read the interview notes or something. So I think with everything, if we try to do things, it's like if you try to go to the gym when you feel like it, you don't make it that often. But if we make it part of our regular structure and calendar, it makes a really big difference. So yeah, but it has to be synthesized. It can't be too detailed, or people start to not pay as much attention.
Nice. Ryan?
I got one. So, the best organizations in the world are the ones that are most customer obsessed. And to work at a customer obsessed place, if you're a manager, a leader of some kind, you have to measure customer obsession. And so what we do at Databricks is we gamify it. So every single customer conversation, every customer note, every customer artifact basically is sent out as a email, and it totally clogs and kills your inbox. But that goes on every day, all day long, and all of those records go into a database. And then when performance reviews happen, halfway point at the end of the year, the managers look through and they say, who's talked to the most customers? You don't have to guess. You can just see oh, this is the most customer obsessed PM. They have way more customer interviews than anyone else, and they created all these notes. Or this designer did way more conversations with customers, and you reward those people.
I love it. SK.
I got 2. One, just as a PM, one of the things that I found super useful is whenever I do a customer call, I actually take an engineering person with me. And I just rotate through them so that every engineering person on the team gets exposure to a customer. And I tell them, actually don't open your mouth. Just shut up and listen. You don't have to do anything. Just show up, listen, pay attention. And what I've found is many times when engineering folks who've actually written the code hear about a problem, they have so much pride in their work, they will actually fix it before I even ask them to fix it. And that's what you're trying to do is how do you listen better to your customers and actually solve the problems without a big planning process, this, that, and that. And the key there is to get engineering people involved. That's 1. 2, I had a great one, but I can't remember. Okay, I'll make up one really quick. When I was a young PM coming up in the 1800s, my manager had a rule that if I didn't spend 25% of my time talking to customers each week, I would get not scolded, but it's hey man, what's happening?
You had a quota.
Yeah, a quota in a sense. And I think that just built the behavior where I was constantly talking to customers, constantly learning, in the sense that the board meetings and all those are good milestones, but the knowledge should be constantly, knowledge should be coming in constantly into the system. And I think that's a good rule to roll out as well.
Love it. So bring in engineers, make a rule, quota, performance reviews. I love that. And also email little marketing.
Bring the whole company along.
Whole company along and
in
regular
all
rituals.
hands and regular rituals.
Yep, all hands. I love that. And then CS, listen to the CS team. Use cases and things. Make sure the leadership team knows. I love it. Well, big round of applause for our panelists. Thanks, guys. Thank you so much.